Hello, and welcome to the Total Mental Performance Podcast, the one and only mindset podcast dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs and coaches master their mindset, giving you insider access to industry leaders around their psychology, their campfire stories, and the mindset required to be successful in this business. I'm your host, Kyran, mental performance coach and founder of Total Mental Performance, the world's fastest growing specialist mindset service dedicated to the fitness industry. So, without further ado, let's lean in and listen. Hello, and welcome to the first Total Mental Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Kyran O'Neill, and really we're going to set the scene. You're probably wondering, who is this guy? If you're one of our clients, hello, it's Kyran. And really we're going to set the scene as to why are we launching this podcast? Because over the past 12 months, we've worked with over 100 fitness entrepreneurs, and some of the patterns that we've seen when it comes to mindset, when they trip themselves up, it's often core three problems. So we're going to give you some background on what is that all about. We're going to be talking about some of the upcoming guests that we're going to be having on the podcast. And we're going to talk about why did I start TMP and why am I starting the podcast? Because ultimately the whole thing was born out of my suicide attempt. I'd spent 8 years boxing internationally, and it really started out of a place where I was severely underweight. I had a binge eating disorder. I was constantly eating so much food to the point where I almost wanted to throw up. And I did throw up a few times, and then drastically cutting weight to make weight for fights. My adrenaline system was just going and going and going and going and going. And I was anxious all the time. I was scared. I was afraid. I was dazed. I was confused. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And it really culminated to this moment where I'm driving down the motorway, the A1M, and I'm driving at 100 miles an hour. I'm that close to crashing the car into the side of the wall. I heard a little whisper, and that whisper was, "Don't do it. Don't do it." So I didn't do it. Pulled into a car park in a service station called South Mims, and I sat on the floor, shaking, crying, binge eating on pick and mix sweets, because who doesn't love pick and mix sweets? And my mum picked me up, and that picked me on a journey of really picking myself up off the floor. And things didn't really get better for me, because at the time I also had a nutrition app that was dedicated to helping fighters make weight safely. And there I was with imposter syndrome, feeling like such a fraud with a binge eating disorder, depressed. I didn't leave my house for weeks, and that left me £15,000 in debt. And I was living on my auntie's sofa, and it was all just going so completely wrong. So TMP really, over the years, has been built out of that struggle. And I don't want any other coach to reach that point or to get there. So that's really where TMP was born from. So my background, I spent 8 years as an international boxer. After that, and that moment where my whole identity essentially collapsed, and that failed suicide attempt was the moment where I had to bounce back. After that, I went into software sales. I spent 6 years working in London, working at some of the most competitive markets in data analytics and software. And within both of those markets of boxing and sales, I've always been coaching on the side, always helping people out of their mindset, helping them break through limiting beliefs. And it was through that journey I started to realize that actually some of the best performers in the world all struggle with imposter syndrome, not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy. And it was through my journey of overcoming those challenges is really where TMP was born. Now, 2 years ago, I decided, you know what? The rat race isn't for me anymore. I've had enough. And for a lot of you listening to this, you probably had that same feeling, whether you were working in an office and then you transitioned into becoming a fitness coach, whether you were on the gym floor perhaps and you have too many clients, you decided to go online, whether you've always been an online coach, it doesn't matter. At some point you made a decision, you didn't just want to be training your time for hours. So out of that, really, that's where I decided, you know what, it's time to reshift this. So 4 years ago, I started studying therapy and psychology on the side. I became a qualified therapist, cognitive hypnotherapist, peak performance coach. And ultimately what we do is a little bit different. We use therapy, business psychology, and peak performance tools to look at one's mindset. And we help people make those shifts and hit peak performance by using tools like therapy to overcome limiting beliefs. Because ultimately what happens is clients come to us and they're often in a state of overwhelm. They're stressed, they're scared, they're wondering what the fuck is going on. And all of that comes from really is an initial insecurity. That might be fear of failure. That could be fear of success, the fear of not being enough, the fear of not being worthy. Maybe you're operating from a scarcity mindset. Maybe you're comparing yourself to other coaches in the industry. You don't quite feel good enough. And even when you're getting those epic client results, you just feel like you're going to get found out. And these are the sort of challenges that come up again and again and again. Anger and frustration, guilt and shame around money, always feeling awkward or dirty whenever you're taking money off of a client. These are the sorts of things, that initial insecurity that we've seen time and time again. And what happens is that leads to an insane work ethic and output. And coaches sign up to these wonderful business masterminds. They're genuinely life-changing, but they don't know where to start. So they start on one thing, then they run off to the next silver bullet, they run off to the next, and they work and they work and they work and they work and they stress and they stress and they stress. Then what happens is they get stuck in this perpetual state of overwhelm. And maybe they're stressed, maybe they're anxious, maybe they're struggling to switch off, they're overworking, they're rushing around, there's massive brain fog. And they just kind of get stuck and they're tripping themselves up again and again and again. And what happens is they start procrastinating. Once they start procrastinating, they start beating themselves up. They're like, I shouldn't be procrastinating. What's wrong with me? And there's only so long your body and mind can drop adrenaline into the system before eventually you start to burn out. And that chronic stress and procrastination just leaves you exhausted, whether that's physically, whether that's mentally. You find yourself falling out of love with your business. You actually dread checking check-ins or getting onto your phone or putting content out there. You feel isolated, disconnected, and lonely. And sometimes you even question, like, what's the point? And that'll knock your confidence and that'll pull on your insecurities even more. So we've seen that time and time again. So that's the majority of our clients. Now, there is a smaller subsection where things are going really well and, clients are good, revenue's good, but they know there's an extra 5 to 10 to 20%, which we're going to go into in a moment. And for those clients, they're really looking for that peak performance element. And that's really where we come in, because we're able to not only help fitness coaches and entrepreneurs overcome those initial insecurities, like the fear of failure or that scarcity mindset, the comparison and imposter syndrome, but we also give them the tools and techniques to manage overwhelm, to be really productive, to have downtime. We say this time and time again, downtime equals uptime. So you're not burning out. You're not getting stuck in that cycle. Too many coaches love coaching, but they leave the industry because they're overwhelmed and because they're burnt out. Now, what we believe instead is total mental performance means having solid psychological foundations, having the confidence, saying what you really want, having an abundance and a growth mindset, and feeling really secure in yourself, really secure in your business. Ultimately, feeling enough regardless of the external results. Having that resilience and that deeper self-knowledge and self-awareness means you have clarity and you have structure. So no matter what life throws at you, whether it's personal challenges or whether it's coaching and commercial challenges, you can have that mental resilience. You understand your challenging emotions. We experience the same emotions, but just the different experiences. Fear is something I see a lot with coaches, very fearful of the market. Maybe loads of clients have left. Maybe you see other coaches doing really well and you think, why am I not doing so well? Oh my God, you look at the economy, you look at the news, all you hear is fear, 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 fear. But fear is just like fire. We think about fire, when it's controlled, it's a wonderful tool. It keeps the house warm, it cooks your chops, cooks your food, and it's a great thing. But fear, when not in control, like fire, burns the house down. It's exactly the same. So when you have that mental resilience, you know when to push, you know when to pull back. You can ultimately, top performers, whenever they're knocked off the board, they get back on the board and they start working and working and working, working, working. They're able to switch off without the guilt, without feeling that they have to work. And once you become really mentally resilient and you have those solid psychological foundations, what you see is focused and consistent output. So that's really where peak performance comes in. This is where you hit flow state. You have that clarity, you have that vision, you have that meaning, you have that purpose. And ultimately, you can really enjoy your work, really enjoy your coaching, and get so creative and have that consistent performance. Not necessarily just because revenue's coming in or you're signing lots of clients. We don't mean that. We mean turning up day in, day out, no matter what, knowing who you are, what you're about, why you're doing it. And that leads to momentum and confidence, and that just strengthens your foundations. So that's the cycle that we see for total mental performance. You're probably wondering, how the fuck does this guy know so much about this stuff? How does he know about that insecurity and that fear and that overwhelm and that burnout? And really, it starts from when I was a kid. So I always tell this story time and time again. So my football team was bottom of the bottom league. My dad was my manager, my primary caregiver. And he benched me every single game. Now, as an adult, I can laugh and go, well, you're just shit at football, dude. And your dad didn't want to, stand up to the other parents and play you. That's the reality. But as a child, we only think in black and white. We can't think in the gray. And we also make the whole world about us. So when things aren't going our way, we blame ourselves and we say, it must be me. It's because I'm not good enough. And the common human neurosis is we're all afraid of not being good enough. We're all afraid of not being worthy. So what happened in that moment is I made a decision, because kids make decisions. They either say, yeah, you're right, I'm not good enough. Self-esteem is shattered. And they kind of just get stuck and they go over the motions. Or they go the other way. And this is the type A's type personalities. And they say, well, fuck you. I'm going to prove you wrong. And I am going to be good enough and I am going to be worthy. So at the time I was thinking, well, football's clearly not it. And, I was a really small, skinny kid. So I thought, I was getting picked on a little bit at school. because I was like, I need to learn how to defend myself, really, because this isn't helpful. So I went over to boxing, because you can't get substituted in boxing. It's impossible. And you are really competing with yourself. And you have to push and push and push and push and push. And that insecure little kid went into a boxing gym one day. And that's where I met my first ever coach, my first ever mentor that completely changed my life. A guy called Martin Calvert. Rest in peace, Marty. He was a top coach. And ultimately, he does what you guys do every day, which is he showed me a way. He taught me that actually I don't have to be crippled by my emotions. I don't have to be crippled by my mindset. That if I work hard and I work in the right way consistently, I can achieve. And it was wonderful, after 9 fights, I was in an open class national finals, boxing kids that had 50, 60, 70 fights. The ascension was really quick. So that's kind of where all of it started. But ultimately, it came from an insecure base of not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy. So every arena I went into, I had to prove myself to make sure that I was the top of the leaderboard. I was the top of the rankings. I was the best fighter in the gym. That then, and then after all of that came to a head, my dream was to go to the Olympics. And ultimately, I wasn't good enough. I was on the England team. I was barely keeping my spot. And then there was a Team GB gap. And that's almost like championship football and premiership football. I just wasn't good enough. So after that, and everything come crashing down, and the boxing didn't work out, and then the nutrition app didn't work out, that's really where I went into software sales. And again, I managed to ascend to the top really quickly, but I burnt out and I felt insecure. And even when I was winning, I still didn't feel like I deserved it. And I felt really kind of bad. It almost felt like I didn't deserve the money I was making in a weird way. And that led to lots of unhelpful behaviors, like, getting in the office for 8 a.m., not leaving the office until about 8 p.m. and then going out partying until about 4 a.m. and just going around and round and round. And it just didn't help. And the more I achieved, the bigger my ego got. And it was so fragile and insecure. I kept going through this pattern where I just wasn't consistent. I'd go into a new field, get to the top, bang, crash, down it goes. And it went round and round and round. And actually, it was the pandemic that I realized, you know what? I've earned enough money to not have to work for a while. I really enjoy my coaching. And as I went through my corporate career, that was really where I look back and actually, I really enjoy everybody that I coach outside of work. Or when I'm coaching or mentoring my juniors in my team, I really enjoy that. Not so much the chasing of the big deals. That didn't really excite me. That's really where that journey and that understanding of what it's like to compare yourself to everyone else, to feel like a fraud, to not feel good enough, to be operating out of a base of scarcity. There's not enough to go around for everyone. There's nearly 8 billion human beings on the planet right now. We've got the internet. There's enough to go around for everyone. But for some reason, we like to think, well, if that person's doing well, that means I can't do well because they've taken my chunk of the market. It just doesn't work like that. So that's really where it all started. And that's where me overcoming those challenges, working with a lady called Hazel Gale, world-class kickboxing world champion, world-class mindset coach. She really helped me through my eating disorder and helped me overcome that. Working with, some really top business mentors that helped me not only build successful sales processes, sales teams and businesses, but helping me overcome my own personal limitations in terms of mindset. And really, that's where I learned about the boardroom. And everybody in our Mindset Academy knows I talk about the boardroom time and time again. Having a team of advisors that are so much more experienced than you are, people that have been there, that have done that. They can tell you which mistakes to avoid, because no matter what happens, if you have a solid boardroom around you and whatever life throws at you, if you know exactly who to call for what, you're going to save yourself so much time, energy, and money. And that's really where I started to cultivate such a solid boardroom of top advisors that allows us to grow and to scale both personally and then professionally our organization, Total Mental Performance. Now, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is it doesn't matter where you are on the scale. It doesn't matter if you're starting out and you're kind of at your 0 to 2K in monthly revenue, whether you're at that 2 to 10, whether you're at that 10 to 25, whether you're at your 25 to 100 in terms of monthly revenue, number of clients, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm quite fortunate. I've been able to work with a client worth $10 billion. And even he shits himself. Even he gets afraid. Even he doesn't feel good enough and worthy at times. And I think the biggest learning I've had over the last 12 months is it doesn't matter where you are on the scale. And some of you might be doing great, but you know there's an extra 1 to 2% you can get out of your mindset because you've never explored it. Deep down, we all have those feelings of insecurity and not feeling enough. And ultimately, the deeper you go and the more you lay those foundations, I've just seen productivity skyrocket. We don't do business advice, but we've seen some of our coaches be able to double their monthly revenue because deep down, you know what you need to do. But your overwhelm and your thinking and your state of mind is what headbutts you, puts you on the floor, and you go, oh, I don't know what to do. You do know what to do. Once you start to manage your emotions and you start to manage your limiting beliefs and your frustration and ultimately setting up world-class routines, that's where we've seen coaches really skyrocket their business. Now, like I said, we don't offer business advice, but business is psychology. Once you start to understand your own psychology, your clients work with you because they resonate with your story. They resonate with your energy. So the deeper you go down into yourself, the deeper you go down into your clients. So the way that I can sit here with authority and talk about these topics is because I've deeply struggled with them myself. I've done over 150 hours of therapy and mindset coaching to help me lay those psychological foundations. And that's why we're able to get results so quick, because we just take all of the juice and we just go, right, you don't need to worry about all of this. Just focus on this and this and this and this. The biggest surprise for me, looking back over the last 12 months, would probably be the amount of love and desire to help within the fitness industry, because the fitness industry can get a bit of a bad rap sometimes. And in the past, it's traditionally been quite shallow. It's all about having the six pack. It's all been about, looking amazing and just that. But the shift that I'm seeing in coaches in the industry today is they do want to help more people. They do want to help them to grow, not just on the physical side of things, but on the psychological and on the mindset side of things. So I think the biggest surprise really is just how many great people there are in the industry and some of the things that they're doing, and it's really, they say birds of a certain feather flock together. So, it's surrounding yourself with other coaches that have similar values that are going to push you. They're going to help you grow and develop. So some of the guests that we've got coming up, they all embody the TMP values and what's important to us. We've got Joe Parrish. It's going to be a great conversation for you to listen to. We've got Kath from Kind Copy, again, a wonderful human being who's an absolute expert in the space. We've got Ben Heron. We've got Simon Johnson. Like, some of the guys and girls that are coming on, you start to realize that they're really here to help people. And when you focus on that and you get really clear on why, because let's be honest, setting up a coaching business is hard. If you stick to just one thing, you go and work for somebody, you just have to do the work. Or actually, when you own a fitness business, you've got so many different things to think about: marketing, sales, operations, legals, financials, everything goes round and round and round. This is often where people get so confused and stuff. So I think that would probably be the biggest surprise, was just how many big hearts there are out there. And once you tap into the why, anything is possible, because you'll just do the work. You might not feel like it. I'm going to be honest, even today on this podcast, I've had a lot of output. I've just come back from London, and I've been fully booked for my one-to-one. And on top of that, seeing friends, seeing family, come back, delivered some face-to-face speaking workshops here. And again, it's been non-stop. And I woke up today and I was exhausted. I was tired, wasn't in the mood. I was thinking, I've got so much I need to do. But where I've learned to understand myself and to understand the red flags of when I am pushing it a little bit hard, I was able to actually go, you know what, I'm not going to work today. I'm going to take some downtime. As I started to take some downtime and relax, I started to realize, you know what, maybe I should really take this podcast off tonight because I'm really not feeling up to it. And I tapped into my why. want to help 1,000 people over the next 3 years, 500 directly through coaches. So whether that's our one-to-one evolution program or whether that's through our mindset academy, or however we do it. And then the other 500 is the charity we support. We support a charity called Amaldo, and they're a mental health charity based in Nigeria that takes mentally ill homeless people off of the streets in Nigeria and gives them residential care and psychiatric care. So that for me is really important. I want to help as many people as I can. So when you have that clarity and that understanding as to what makes you tick, then all of a sudden, 30 minutes out from this podcast, you know what? No, fuck it. Let's go. We're going to do this. Picked up my energy, and here we are. We're shooting the podcast right now. So yeah, you can tap into your why, tap into that heart that you've got, and just go for it. Then the world's your oyster. A really grateful position at Total Mental Performance because we haven't really built our business on marketing. Like, we don't have a solid, marketing machine that we've kind of built from the ground. We're not throwing thousands of pounds in ads or whatever. We've built up very organically, very slowly. And essentially, I think where that comes from is the work that we do with all of our clients. I think something like 80 to 90% of all of our clients come through referral, which is incredible. And the thing that we see with clients is they often come in and sometimes they're just dazed and confused. They don't even know where to start from a mindset perspective. But we pick up something. Maybe they're feeling overwhelmed. Maybe they're feeling really anxious. Maybe they're doubting themselves. Then we start there. And what we find is that's burning up so much psychological and physiological energy. When we make that little shift, all of a sudden they've got an extra 10 to 20% capacity as to what they can think about and where they can direct their feelings towards. And then what happens off the back of that is, with that understanding and that newfound self-knowledge, they start working a little bit harder. They have a little bit more structure. They're a little bit clearer. And then what starts to happen is something else will come up. But it's not as urgent as the first thing, but it's still important. Maybe they're experiencing a little bit of anxiety around check-ins, and oh my God, I get anxious every time. I feel bad to open and check my messages. Maybe it's getting in front of camera. They know they need to get in front of camera and talk more, but there's an anxiety or there's an insecurity. So our body image is a huge thing in this industry. A lot of people are afraid of how they look, whether that's, their bodies, their faces, whatever. They get really caught up on that, and that really throws them off from just speaking in front of the camera and even just doing what we're doing right now, So once we shift that, all of a sudden they're putting out more content. They become much more happier, much more relaxed. A quick shout out to Simon Bennett, who actually today, we were voice noting each other on Instagram, and I said, hey, how are you getting on with the camera stuff? And he goes, you're never going to guess what, Kyran. I said, what's that? He said, well, not only have I shifted my camera stuff, I've done my first few photo shoots and I'm starting to feel really confident, but I've actually just been invited to go on a national television ad, and I'm actually going to be on Pure Gym's national campaign. They're going to be filming me coaching some clients. How cool is that? We hold back so much of ourselves because we're afraid of what people think, whether that's people in our family, in our friends, in our local area. We think, oh, I don't really want to say that. I don't want to put that out there. I don't want to be embarrassed, or what are they going to say, what are they going to think? But once you start to realize, actually, no one really cares about what you're doing. Everybody's so busy and stressed and overwhelmed with their own stuff. It's almost egotistical to think other people give a shit. And the phrase that comes back to mind always is, those that mind don't matter, and those that matter don't mind. So if you care enough and you've done the deeper work on your insecurities, you start putting yourself out there, you start having those harder conversations, you start getting in front of camera and putting your message out there, and things start to shift. So I think really that's probably the big thing. They see those personal changes, and if their friends and family and their clients around them start to see them to change. And that ultimately results in, guess what? More people want to work with them. So they get more clients, they feel more relaxed, they feel more confident, they take that downtime, they make more revenue. So I think that's probably where our secret sauce is, because we're applying, whether that's therapy or business psychology or peak performance, depending on the individual, because we're applying those tools and techniques in somebody that's already in an okay space, their growth completely flies. Looking forward, why did I start this podcast? Well, to be honest, the job that coaches do and the change that they make in their clients' lives is just so big. But not every fitness coach is in a position whether they're ready to work with, whether it's our mindset academy, our one-to-one, whether that's on a personal position because you don't feel like you're ready to talk about this stuff or go into a group or talk to someone about that. I want to put a resource out there. So it doesn't matter where you are or where you are in the industry, that you can hear these conversations and you can look up to some of the top performers in this industry and hear how they've overcome their own imposter syndrome, their own comparison syndrome, what it is they struggle with, pulling out stories and war stories and campfire stories from, some of the best in the industry. So really for me, I'm trying to create a resource where it doesn't matter who you are or where you're at in the fitness coaching industry, you can go there and you can come here and you can listen and you can learn, you can pick up tips and just realize that you're not alone. We're all fellow strugglers. We're all afraid of not being good enough, of things not working out. We're all afraid of not reaching our potential. We all know there's an extra 1 to 5% and we're all obsessed with trying to get there, but we just don't know how. So really the motivation for the podcast is to help be that resource. And taking that a step further, we've got our TMP conference coming up in September 2022, and we want to create the world's largest and most effective conference dedicated to mindset for fitness professionals, because time and time again, too many coaches in the industry are burning out. They're leaving the industry when actually helping people and coaching is something that they love, but they haven't done the deeper work, or they just haven't really been exposed to opportunities to go and do the deeper work. They get stuck in their own heads and they're just going round and round and round and round and round. Even the top coaches, the top business coaches in this space that you see, they're all afraid. They've all experienced the fear of not being good enough, the fear of not being lovable, and have had to overcome them. If they can do it, you can do it. It just takes time. It just takes patience. You've just got to find a way. One question that I'm always going to ask guests is, what does total mental performance mean to you? And I don't mean the company, but I mean the actual phrase. And for me, total mental performance is being in a space where almost no matter what life throws at you, you can knuckle down and go, you know what, regardless of maybe I've lost a load of clients, maybe there's been a breakup, maybe there's been a personal life event, that ultimately you're enough and you're worthy, regardless of the external world. And having that deep down inner confidence and resilience to know, even if you was to lose everything today, you'll bounce back. You'll find a way. So for me, total mental performance is being able to take that step back, being able to take that breath, being able to execute, being able to operate, being able to be productive, and ultimately having that peak performance, that flow state, that energy, that clarity. You know who you are, what you're about, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're going to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, you have the confidence to go, I'll figure it out along the way. So that for me is total mental performance. I'm dead fascinated to see what our upcoming guests, what they think, or their version of the phrase total mental performance is. We're going to be releasing these every single week. We're going to have a new guest on. So make sure that you subscribe, whether it's you find us on Instagram, which is just Total Mental Performance, our website, www.totalmentalperformance.com. And you can find all of our episodes on Spotify. They will be available in a few episodes' time on iTunes, YouTube, and all of the major channels. So thank you so much for tuning in and come along on the journey.